Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and as some of you know, I'm working with Aitor, the Spanish knife manufacturer, making my own survival knife. It's a pretty cool project. It's something that I guess anyone into survival and preparedness has dreamed of at one time or another, and actually having this done by a company like Aitor, who I respect and have known for decades, and is maybe one of the first knife crushes in terms of survival knives. It's a real dream come true. Now, one of the things that we are in the fence about is the saw. Do you need a saw in your survival knife? And this is one of those things that is extremely polarized. This is like 9mm versus 45. This is one of those things where people either feel very strongly in favor or against it, right? Now, I guess this says something already. The M9 Bayonet of the United States has a saw. Glock knife has both. You have the option of with saw or without saw. The Jungle King by Aitor, both the Jungle King 1 and Jungle King 2, some of the more iconic survival knives ever made, both of them have saw. And actually talking directly with people from Aitor, they feel very strongly about a survival knife needs to have a saw. They actually feel very strongly about that, and part of that is because they do a very good job with their saw. It's one of the best cutting saws in any of these knives that you may come across. Of course, it's always better if you have a dedicated saw, but the thing is, with a survival knife, it may well be the only tool that you have. So the debate is, should I have a mediocre, somewhat okay saw, or should I better just go without it and just have a nice clean surface here in the back and just baton and whatnot, just find some other solution. Of course, one of the more liked saws out there is in the Victorinox soldier knife. This is actually the pocket knife issued to Swiss by the Swiss military. The German armed forces also issue a similar knife, and one of the advantages that it has is a nice saw. And this is something that most people will agree on. Yeah, it's awesome and it's nice to have a saw in your pocket knife. Now the thing is, and we're going to be doing a little test here in a minute, but the thing is, with saws, the wider the blade, the worse the saw works, because ideally you would have this. Ideally you would have a saw that is very thin, a very thin blade that just cuts like an actual saw. When you have a survival knife, it starts getting thicker and you need to find some solutions. Now, in these cases, Glock makes something a little bit more, counterintuitive it seems, but let's go and try it out and see how these work. Okay, so that was about 20 seconds each, and yes, of course, this isn't something super accurate or anything like that, but I think it illustrates quite well, and the results just show that as well. The finer the blade, the better it's going to be working as a saw. The thicker it is, the more complicated it gets, and it's going to be depending quite a lot on the design that you have, so as to work around that, a problem of having a very thick stock of a knife and having a saw there. So the one that cut best, I think it shouldn't be any surprise, the actual saw. This is more of a green wood type of saw, but it still did a nice job there, and quickly going very, very well. Just 20 seconds, did a nice job there. The Victorinox came in second place, but still did very good. You see how in those 20 seconds, again, nothing too accurate, just a little home experiment, but you see that it's a little bit thicker, and it still did a very nice job because it's still rather thin. In spite of it being just a little bit thicker, of course, here I have a lot more length, and that just shows how wonderfully well designed this saw is. But most of all, it's this ability of, since you have it in a pocket knife, you can go as thin as you want, and they make a nice narrow blade that cuts nicely as a saw in wood. Now, when it comes to the larger knives, here is where it gets complicated. The Glock knife is very thick, so it's a 5mm thick blade, and it has this counterintuitive saw in which you're cutting when you're pushing forward. Usually you feel more like when dragging. That's usually how saws, if they have to pick one side or the other, usually that's preferred. In this case, you have to go against, kind of like against the grain. It does cut somewhat, is of course not all that great, but it makes a nice square notch. And man, if you don't have anything else, I guess it's better than having nothing. At least you'll have something to keep you busy. Now, the worst one by far was the M9. The M9 is just, as I saw, it's just terrible. I've read that it's more like a file and is intended to cut through the skin of an airplane, and I see how this could be somewhat of a metal file, and that would help cut through it. But man, if it has this hard of a time going through wood, I just don't want to try this against metal. It's just something that doesn't get that well of a job done. This V shape just works against your best interest, and it barely makes a dent there in the wood. The one that cuts better of these is they were designed by Aitor. They make a very nice job with their saw. They have like a dual, so it's like they try to divide the saw, on both sides of the knife, and that gives you a smaller contact surface, and the stuff cut in between is just ripped off. So it makes a pretty decent notch. And yes, of course, it's nowhere near as good as these two, of course, but of the knives, it's a pretty good. I guess this is as good as you're gonna be getting it with a survival knife this thick. It's just not all that great for making a saw. But this dual set, these two sets of teeth on either side, I think it's a good compromise, and allowing you to have at least somewhat of a saw that makes a very nice square notch, and you go somewhat deep into that wood. All right. If you're going to be having this as your only tool, and the argument, I'd rather have a bad saw or a so-so saw rather than have nothing. Okay, I can see that, but I understand why they feel strongly about theirs, because it's actually very good. It's one of the best saws that I found in any survival knife, as far as I know. So folks, that's it. That's a little experiment here, trying it out and seeing how it works. Hope you enjoy it. Take care. See you in the next video.